Marcus' name was moving. Not falling. Not sliding from some draft or vibration. Moving, dragging itself across the concrete floor in deliberate, impossible strokes, as if invisible fingers were pulling it toward the darkness at the edge of our candle circle. The four of us stared in paralyzed silence as the paper scraped against the basement floor, that soft whisper of friction the only sound in the suffocating quiet. Then every candle flame shot upward in perfect unison, pillars of fire, stretching 3 feet high, casting wild, dancing shadows across the unfinished walls. That's when the power died. Not just the lights, everything. The distant hum of the refrigerator upstairs cut out mid-cycle. The barely perceptible buzz of electricity through walls, that subliminal white noise of modern life, vanished completely. The house fell into a silence so absolute it felt like being sealed inside a tomb. I grabbed for my phone, desperate for any source of light beyond the now flickering candles. The screen was black, dead. I pressed the power button frantically, nothing. Around me, I heard the same panic. Marcus, Jenny, and Tyler, all fumbling with their devices, their breathing growing faster, more shallow. Why won't it turn on? Jenny's voice cracked. It was at 70%. It was just all 4 phones dead simultaneously. Not powered off, not discharged, just gone. As if something had reached into the electronics and killed them from the inside. In the darkness beyond our circle of trembling candlelight, something breathed. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't our imagination. It was the slow, deliberate inhale of something that had just woken up. Something that had been waiting in the forgotten spaces of this basement for someone stupid enough to call it forth. And on Thanksgiving night, in a suburban basement in Asheville, North Carolina, 4 college students had just invited something impossible into the world. Welcome back to the channel. Before we go any further, I need to ask, where are you watching from right now? Are you alone? Are you in a basement? Because after you hear what happened to Marcus Chen, Jenny Rodriguez, Tyler Morrison, and the narrator on November 23, 2023, you might want to reconsider being in any basement ever again. This isn't fiction. This isn't an urban legend passed around on Reddit. This is documented testimony from 4 witnesses who experienced something that shouldn't exist. Something that responds to invitation. Something that's still there, waiting in the dark spaces beneath houses, hoping for someone else to call its name. If this story makes your skin crawl, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more true horror from the places we're not supposed to look. And comment below, have you ever done a séance? Have you ever felt something respond? Let's get into it. But, I'm warning you, some stories change the way you see empty rooms forever. Thanksgiving break, junior year of college. The 4 of us had been inseparable since freshman orientation. Marcus and I were roommates, Jenny was Marcus' girlfriend, and Tyler was the friend who somehow made every terrible idea sound reasonable. We'd all gone home for the holiday, but by Thursday evening, the inevitable family drama had driven us back to campus earlier than planned. Marcus' parents were fighting about his father's gambling debts. Jenny's extended family had spent dinner making passive-aggressive comments about her major. Tyler's conservative relatives had spent 4 hours lecturing him about his lifestyle choices. And my family? Well, my family had barely noticed I'd come home at all. So we did what we always did when life got heavy. We reconvened at the house Marcus and I rented off campus, a 1,960-second split level with wood paneling, shag carpet, and a basement that smelled perpetually of mildew and old concrete. We should do something, Tyler announced around 9 p.m., sprawled across our thrift store couch with a beer in hand. Something to mark this monumentally depressing Thanksgiving. Something memorable. Please tell me you're not suggesting a Friendsgiving dinner. Jenny groaned. I've had enough forced gratitude for one day. No. Something darker. Tyler's eyes lit up with that particular brand of mischief that usually preceded our worst decisions. It's almost midnight. Perfect timing for a séance. Marcus laughed. A séance? What are we, Victorian spiritualists? Come on! It'll be fun! We're all stressed. We need a distraction. And honestly, Tyler gestured broadly. When's the last time any of us did something genuinely weird? I should have said no. Looking back, I can identify that exact moment as the fork in the road where we could have chosen differently. But I was 20 years old, buzzed on cheap beer, and tired of feeling like my life was a series of obligations and disappointments. The idea of doing something transgressive, even something as silly as a fake séance, felt liberating. "I'm in," I heard myself say. Jenny exchanged a glance with Marcus. "You two are idiots." "But sure, why not? It's not like anything's actually going to happen." That's where she was wrong. Tyler, it turned out, had done research. Of course he had. He pulled up a website on his laptop, still working then, still connected to the world that outlined a ritual called the Four Corners Summoning. According to the site, it was a simplified version of older European spiritualist practices, designed to thin the veil between worlds and invite contact with entities seeking acknowledgement. Seeking acknowledgement, 2%. Marcus read over Tyler's shoulder. "That's ominous." "It's fine," Tyler insisted. "It says right here it's completely safe as long as you follow the rules. We each write our name on a piece of paper, arrange them in a circle in a confined space, preferably underground light candles at the cardinal directions, and speak the invitation phrase 3 times. Then we wait." "Wait for what?" Jenny asked. "For something to respond. Or not. Probably not. But that's the whole point. The anticipation. The atmosphere. It's like a scary movie. Except we're in it." The basement was Marcus' suggestion. "If we're going to do this properly, we should commit. Basements are creepier than living rooms." Our basement was accessed through a door in the kitchen that opened onto steep wooden stairs. It was unfinished, bare concrete floor. Exposed joists holding up the first floor, a few storage boxes pushed against the walls, and that single bare bulb hanging from a wire in the center of the space. We never spent time down there. There was no reason to. It was cold, damp, and had that particular quality of underground spaces that made you want to leave as quickly as possible. Perfect, in other words, for our stupid plan. We gathered supplies. 4 white candles from Jenny's aromatherapy kit, matches, a notebook to tear pages from, and a pen. By 11:30 p.m., we were descending into the basement, our footsteps echoing on the concrete, our breath forming little clouds in the cold November air. "It's freezing down here," Jenny said, wrapping her cardigan tighter. "Can we at least keep the door open?" "Defeats the purpose," Tyler said. "Confined space, remember? We need to create a proper boundary." I pulled the door shut. The click of the latch felt unnaturally loud. Marcus flipped the light switch. The bulb flickered twice before stabilizing, a detail I remember vividly because it would be the last time we'd see electric light for hours. We set up the ritual in the center of the basement. Each of us wrote our name on a piece of notebook paper, block letters, first and last name, as Tyler's website had specified. Then we arranged them in a circle, maybe 6 feet in diameter, with a candle at each cardinal point. Tyler used a compass app on his phone to orient them properly. North, south, east, west. "This feels ridiculous," Marcus said, but he was smiling. We all were. It was absurd, sitting cross-legged on cold concrete, about to perform an amateur séance like characters in a bad horror movie. The ridiculousness was part of the appeal. "Okay," Tyler said, pulling up the website on his phone one more time. "So we all have to say the invitation together, 3 times. Then we stay silent and wait for 5 minutes. If nothing happens, we blow out the candles and go back upstairs. Everyone ready?" We nodded. Jenny reached over and squeezed Marcus' hand. I caught Tyler's eye and grinned. "This would make a great story later. Remember that Thanksgiving we did a séance in the basement? Remember how nothing happened and we felt like idiots?" Tyler read the words from his screen. "We 4 call forth what waits forgotten. We 4 offer acknowledgement to what seeks witness. We 4 open the door between spaces. Respond, if you will. Show yourself, if you can. We repeated it. Once, twice, 3 times. Our voices grew more confident with each repetition, losing the self-conscious laughter of the first round. By the 3rd recitation, we sounded almost serious, almost like we meant it. Then we fell silent. The basement seemed to contract around us, the shadows pressing closer to our small circle of candlelight. I counted seconds in my head, listening for any sound, any change. Nothing. Just the faint drip of water from the pipes overhead and our quiet breathing. 30 seconds passed. Then a minute. Well, this is anticlimactic, Marcus whispered. That's when Marcus' paper moved. At first, I thought it imagined it. A trick of the flickering candlelight, maybe, or my eyes playing games in the dim basement. But then Jenny gasped, and I knew she'd seen it too. The piece of paper with Marcus Chen written in his blocky handwriting was sliding across the concrete floor. Not dramatically, just a slow, steady drag, as if someone had hooked an invisible fishing line to it and was gently pulling. What? The Marcus leaned forward, reaching for his name. Don't break the circle, Tyler hissed, grabbing Marcus' arm. The website said once you start, you have to see it through. Dude! That's my name moving. By itself. We need to. The candle flames shot upward, all 4 at once. The small, flickering flames stretched into pillars of fire, climbing impossibly high without consuming more wax, without spreading to anything nearby. Just straight up, 3 feet tall, casting the basement in harsh, dancing light that made everything seem to move. The shadows on the walls writhed like living things. I felt the temperature drop. Not gradually, instantly. One moment, the basement was uncomfortably cold. The next, it was Arctic. Our breath came out in thick white plumes. Frost began forming on the concrete walls in intricate, branching patterns that spread before our eyes like time-lapse photography. Okay, this isn't funny anymore, Jenny said, her voice tight with fear. Tyler, what does your website say to do if something actually tower went out? The lone bulb overhead died mid-flicker, plunging us into darkness. Not the comfortable darkness of a room at night, this was absolute. Suffocating. The kind of darkness that exists underground, far from any natural light. For a heartbeat, even the candles seemed to dim, as if something was actively pushing back against their glow. Then they stabilized, leaving us in a small bubble of trembling light surrounded by impenetrable black. It's fine, Marcus said, though his voice betrayed him. Just a power outage. Old house. Probably a blown breaker. I'll go check my phone's dead, Tyler interrupted. He was pressing buttons frantically, his face illuminated by absolutely nothing. It won't turn on. It was at 85%. It won't. I pulled out my own phone. Black screen. Dead weight in my hand. I tried the power button. Held it down for 10 seconds. Nothing. Mine too, Jenny whispered. Her hands were shaking as she held up her iPhone, the same model as mine, the one that should have been virtually indestructible. This doesn't make sense. How do all our phones die at exactly the same moment? They don't, I said quietly. Unless something made them. The word hung in the air between us. Something. That's when we heard the breathing. It came from the darkness beyond our circle, from the direction where the basement stairs should have been. Slow, measured. The sound of air moving through passages that weren't quite human. Too wet, too deliberate. Each inhale lasted exactly 4 seconds. Each exhale, 5. We sat frozen, not daring to move, barely daring to breathe ourselves. The sound continued, steady and patient, like whatever was making it had all the time in the world. Hello. Tyler's voice cracked on the word. Is someone there? The breathing stopped. In the silence that followed, I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Could hear Jenny's quiet whimpering. Could hear Marcus muttering no, no, no under his breath. Then came the footsteps. Not boots or shoes, something heavier, wetter, like bare feet on concrete, except each step left behind a sound like meat slapping against stone. The footsteps circled our candlelit space, moving clockwise, slow and deliberate. Something was walking around us, just beyond the light's reach, studying us. "The door," I whispered. "We need to get to the door." "Where is the door?" Jenny hissed back. "I can't see anything past the candles." She was right. The darkness beyond our circle had become impenetrable, almost solid. Even straining my eyes, I couldn't make out the stairs, the walls, anything. It was as if the basement had expanded while we weren't looking, stretching into an infinite void with our 4 candles the only point of reference. The footsteps stopped. Directly behind me, I felt its presence there. A pocket of cold air that was somehow colder than the already frigid basement. Something was standing right behind me, close enough that I should have been able to feel its breath on my neck, but I couldn't, because whatever it was didn't breathe the way living things breathe. "Don't turn around," Marcus said, his eyes fixed on something over my shoulder. His face had gone white. "Whatever you do, don't turn around." But I saw it in his eyes, in Jenny's expression, in the way Tyler had pressed himself backward, trying to get as far from me as possible while still maintaining the circle. There was something behind me, something they could see but I couldn't. "What is it?" I whispered. "What's behind me?" "Nothing," Marcus said. But his voice carried no conviction. "There's nothing there. Nothing at all." And that's when I understood. The most terrifying thing wasn't that something was standing behind me. It was that they could see the absence of something, the shape of nothing, a void in the form of a person, darker than the darkness around it, like a hole cut in reality itself. The invisible intruder had accepted our invitation, and it was studying me. I forced myself to stay still, every muscle locked tight with terror. The cold presence behind me seemed to intensify, as if the thing was leaning closer, examining me the way a scientist might examine a specimen under glass. Then it spoke. Not with words, not exactly, but a sound emerged from the space behind me that my brain desperately tried to interpret as language. It was like listening to someone speak underwater, or hearing your name called from the far end of a long hallway, or the half-remembered echo of a conversation from a dream. The sound had texture, had cadence, but carried no meaning I could understand. Until it did. One word penetrated the barrier between impossible sound and human comprehension. Acknowledged. The presence moved away from behind me. The footsteps resumed, circling our group, but now I could see it too, or rather, I could see where it was by the absence of everything else. A human-shaped void, darker than the surrounding darkness, moving with a gait that was almost right but slightly wrong, joints bending at angles that were just off enough to be disturbing. It completed its circuit and stopped in front of Tyler, who had pulled his knees up to his chest, making himself as small as possible. "We didn't mean to," Tyler stammered. It was just supposed to be 4 corners," the thing said, its voice a chorus of whispers that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. 4 names, 4 invitations. 4 doors opened. The pieces of paper with our names on them began to move again. This time, they didn't slide, they lifted, rising into the air one by one, hovering at eye level, rotating slowly as if on display. Marcus, Jenny, Tyler, Alex. Hearing my name spoken by that thing, that collection of whispers and void and wrongness sent ice through my veins. It knew us now, had read our names, had accepted our invitation. "What do you want?" Jenny asked, tears streaming down her face. "Please, well, do anything. Just let us go." The thing tilted its head. I could see the movement in the way the void shifted. "Want? I want what all forgotten things want. To be seen, to be remembered, to exist beyond the spaces between." It reached out with an appendage that might have been an arm. The void shape extended, stretching impossibly long, until it passed directly through the candle flame at the north point of our circle. The flame didn't go out. Instead, it changed. The warm yellow light turned blue, then purple, then a color I don't have words for, something that hurt to look at, something that wasn't quite part of the visible spectrum. You called me forth. The thing continued. You spoke the words. You offered acknowledgement. I am here because you invited me, because you opened the doors between spaces. Then, we uninvite you. Marcus shouted, finding some reservoir of courage. Whatever we did, we take it back. Go back to wherever you came from. The thing laughed. At least, I think it was laughter, a sound like wind through empty buildings, like static on dead phone lines, like the echo in abandoned places. The door opens both ways, Marcus Chen. I am here now. Witnessed, acknowledged, real. The purple flames spread to the other candles, one by one. East, west, south. Each flame transforming into that wrong-colored light that cast our shadows in disturbing directions, making the walls seem to pulse and breathe. But I am not unkind, the thing said. I will offer you a choice. A game, if you will. After all, you came here seeking entertainment, seeking something to break the monotony of your privileged little lives. The 4 pieces of paper with our names dropped back to the floor, arranging themselves at precise points around the circle. One of you may leave. One door will open, but you must choose who. You must reach consensus. You have until the candles burn out. I looked at the candles. They were already half consumed, the wax melting faster than physics should allow. Maybe 20 minutes left, maybe less. That's not a choice, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. That's torture, psychological torture. Yes, the thing agreed, and I could hear satisfaction in its multitude of whispers. It is. Consider it payment for summoning me, for pulling me from the comfortable darkness into this painful reality. Someone must pay the price of invitation. The question is, who will it be? The entity retreated back into the deeper darkness, its void shape merging with the shadows. But its presence remained, watching, waiting. The 4 of us stared at each other in the eerie purple light, the weight of an impossible choice settling over us like a shroud. The candles continued to burn, and the basement had become a prison with only one key. For a full minute, none of us spoke. We sat in our circle on the cold concrete, watching the candles burn down, watching our shadows twist in impossible directions, trying to process what had just happened. This isn't real, Jenny finally said, her voice hollow. We're hallucinating. Carbon monoxide or something. All 4 of us breathing bad air. How would that explain our phones? Tyler countered. How would that explain, he gestured at the darkness, everything. I don't care how it's explained. Jenny's voice rose to near hysteria. I just want out. I want out of this basement. Then go, Marcus said quietly. The thing said one of us could leave. Go. Jenny looked at him, stricken. You want me to just abandon you? I want you to be safe. If one of us can get out, it should be you. No. I cut in. Nobody's leaving. Not until we all can. There has to be another way. Did you not hear that thing? Tyler said, his voice shaking. It gave us a choice. We either make the choice, or none of us leave. Those are the only options. Those are the only options it gave us. But we're not playing its game. We're going to find the stairs. We're going to get the door open. And we're all leaving together. It sounded braver than I felt. In truth, I had no idea if escape was even possible. The darkness beyond our candle circle had become absolute. For all I knew, the basement stairs no longer existed. For all I knew, we were somewhere else entirely, some pocket dimension the entity had pulled us into when we spoke those words. But I couldn't say that, not when I could see the terror in my friend's eyes, the barely contained panic that threatened to explode into full hysteria. Okay, Marcus said, straightening up. Okay, Alex is right. We stay together. First thing, we need to figure out where we are. The stairs were behind Tyler when we started, so they should still be there. Should be, Tyler muttered. But you saw what I saw. There's nothing out there. Just dark. Then we take a candle and we look. Come on. Marcus reached for the northern candle, the one that had turned that impossible purple color first. His hand hesitated inches from it, and I understood why. Something about that flame was wrong. It cast light, yes, but the light itself felt hostile, awareness-inducing, like being under surveillance. Maybe one of the others, Jenny suggested. But when we looked, all 4 candles had transformed. The same purple, not purple flame burned on each wick, and the light they cast made everything seem slightly off. Shadows fell in the wrong directions. Surfaces that should have been flat appeared to curve, and in my peripheral vision, I kept catching glimpses of movement shapes at the edge of the light that vanished when I looked directly at them. "We don't have a choice," Marcus said. He picked up the southern candle, his hand shaking. The flame flickered but held. "Stay close. Everyone hold on to each other. We're not getting separated." We stood as a unit, Marcus holding the candle aloft, the rest of us gripping each other's arms or shoulders. The moment we stepped outside the circle formed by our names, I felt it a change in pressure, like descending in an airplane. My ears popped. The cold intensified, and the whispers started. They came from everywhere and nowhere. Dozens of voices speaking in that same half-language the entity had used. Some sounded curious. Some sounded hungry. Some sounded angry that Wed disturbed them. The words didn't make sense individually, but their collective meaning was clear. "You don't belong here. You should never have come." "Where are the stairs?" Jenny asked, her voice tight. "They should be right here. We're standing where they should be." She was right. Wed moved maybe 10 feet from our circle, oriented in the direction where the basement stairs had been. But there was nothing, just more concrete floor stretching into darkness. No walls, no stairs, no door. "The thing moved us," Tyler said. "Or moved the space around us. We're not in the basement anymore. We have to be," I argued. But even as I said it, I knew he was right. The basement under our rental house was maybe 30 feet square. Wed already walked farther than that, and we still hadn't encountered a wall. Marcus held the candle higher, trying to extend its range. The purple light pushed back the darkness, revealing more empty concrete, more nothing. "Except wait," Marcus said. "There. Do you see that? In the distance, right at the edge of the candle's reach, something reflected the light. A surface, smooth and vertical. A wall," Jenny asked hopefully. "Maybe. Let's check." We moved toward it as a unit, keeping physical contact with each other. The whispers grew louder with each step. More insistent, more intelligible. I started to pick out individual words. Foolish, trapped, ours now. So young, so afraid. The reflecting surface resolved as we approached. It wasn't a wall, it was a mirror. An enormous mirror, easily 10 feet tall and twice as wide, standing freestanding on the concrete floor. Its frame was ornate, Baroque, with carved details that seemed to writhe in the purple light, and the reflection it showed wasn't us. We stood maybe 6 feet from the mirror, all 4 of us clustered together, Marcus holding the candle. But the mirror showed an empty basement. No people, no candle. Just an abandoned space with concrete floors and walls, and in the distance, a set of stairs leading up to a closed door. Our stairs. Our door. Our way out. "It's showing the real basement," I said. "The one we left." "Can we?" Jenny reached toward the mirror. "Can we go through?" "Don't." Tyler grabbed her hand. "That's probably exactly what it wants us to do. Clever boy." The entity's voice whispered from the darkness. I spun, searching for its void shape, but couldn't locate it. The voice seemed to come from every direction. "The mirror shows what you left behind, what you cannot return to. Not unless you make your choice." "This is insane," Marcus said. "We're not playing your game. Then you will remain here, in the space between. The forgotten place. You'll join the others who refuse to choose." "Others?" I asked. "What others?" The entity didn't answer with words. Instead, the darkness beyond the mirror's light began to shift. Shapes emerged, human shapes, or things that had once been human. They stood at the very edge of the purple light, dozens of them, maybe more, translucent, fading, like old photographs left too long in the sun. They were young, most of them, teenagers, college students, a few older folks, but not many, and they all had the same expression, hollow-eyed resignation. "Holy shit," Tyler breathed. "How long have they been here?" One of the figures drifted closer, a girl who couldn't have been older than 19, wearing clothes that looked like they were from the 1992nd. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out. Instead, she raised her hand and pointed. Not at us. At the pieces of paper with our names still visible back in the circle. "Shay's trying to tell us something," Jenny said. The ghost girl pointed again, more urgently. Then she held up fingers. 4 fingers. Then pointed at herself. Then held up fingers again. But this time, only 3. 4 became 3, I said. They had 4 people. 1 left. 3 stayed behind. The girl nodded vigorously, her translucent form flickering like a bad signal. She pointed at more of the ghost figures around her. A boy who looked about our age made the same gesture. 5 fingers, then 4. A middle-aged woman. 3 fingers, then 2. They all had to choose, Marcus said, the horror dawning in his voice. They all had to decide who got to leave, and the ones who stayed behind, they're still here, trapped. "Now you understand," the entity said, its presence suddenly close again. I could feel it behind me, that pocket of cold void. This is how it works. This is how it has always worked. One may leave. The rest become part of this place, part of me, feeding my existence with their fear, their regret, their endless wondering if they made the right choice. "That's not going to happen to us," I said, surprised by the anger in my own voice. "You're a parasite. You feed on fear and isolation." "But we're not isolated. We're together. For now," the entity agreed. "But the candles burn low. Soon, you will have no light at all. And in the darkness, your togetherness will mean nothing. You'll feel each other slipping away. Doubt will creep in. Resentment. Who deserves to live more? Who has more to offer the world? Whose death would be less tragic?" "Stop," Jenny whispered. But I could see in her eyes that the entity's words were already working, planting seeds of terrible thoughts. The candle in Marcus' hand flickered. We all looked at it. Less than a quarter of the wax remained, maybe 10 minutes before it guttered out completely. "We need to make a decision," Tyler said quietly. "No," my voice was firm. "We're not doing this. Alex, be realistic. If we don't choose, we all die here. We become like them." He gestured at the ghost figures. "At least if one of us escapes, we can get help." "Call the police. Get someone to break down the door from the outside. And what if that doesn't work? What if whoever leaves can't get back in? Then we've sacrificed 3 lives for nothing." "It's not for nothing if one person survives," says the person who probably wants to be that one person. The words came out harsher than I intended. Tyler's face went white, then red. "Fuck you, Alex. At least I'm trying to think of a solution instead of just waiting to die." "Guys, stop," Marcus interjected. "This is exactly what it wants. It wants us to turn on each other." But the damage was done. I could feel it, the trust that had held us together for 3 years beginning to crack. Tyler wasn't meeting my eyes. Jenny was looking at Marcus with an expression I couldn't quite read. And Marcus himself was staring at the candle, watching the wax drip, calculating time. The entity laughed, its wind-through empty buildings laugh. There it is, the first fracture. It always starts the same way. Next will come the accusations, the justifications. I have more to live for, am worth more to society. My death would hurt more people. And eventually, inevitably, you'll make your choice, or you'll let the candle choose for you. The ghost figures pressed closer, and I could see the expressions on their translucent faces now. Not just resignation, regret, shame, the face of people who had made an impossible choice and were being forced to relive it eternally. "There has to be another way," I said desperately. "The ritual, maybe we can reverse it." "Tyler, what did that website say? Were there any instructions for ending it?" Tyler pulled out his phone before remembering it was dead. "It doesn't matter. We can't access it anyway. But you read it. You must remember something. Was there a closing phrase? A way to dismiss whatever you summoned?" He thought for a moment. His brow furrowed. "There was something. A dismissal phrase. But it required all participants to speak it in unison while the circle was intact. We already broke the circle. We're not in it anymore. Then we get back to it. And say what, exactly?" I don't remember the exact words. The candle flickered again, more insistently. "Less than 5 minutes now. Think." I grabbed Tyler's shoulders, maybe too hard. "You need to remember." "I'm trying." "It was something about closing the doors? Revoking the invitation? I don't know." Jenny suddenly spoke up, her voice strangely calm. "I'll stay." We all turned to look at her. "What?" Marcus said. "I'll stay. The 3 of you can go. I'm the obvious choice." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I don't have family anymore. No siblings. My parents are gone. I'm working toward a degree in comparative literature, not exactly curing cancer. If one of us has to be sacrificed, it should be me. The one whose absence would leave the smallest hole in the world." "Jenny." No, Marcus reached for her, but she stepped back. "It's logical, Marcus. You're studying engineering. Tyler's in pre-med. Alex is doing social work. You all have futures that matter. I'm just here." "That's not true," Marcus said, tears streaming down his face. "You matter. You matter more than anything. Not more than your life. Not more than your future." Jenny's voice cracked. "If you love me, Marcus, you'll let me do this. You'll take the chance to live and do something meaningful with it." The entity's presence swelled, and I could feel its satisfaction like a physical force. This was exactly what it wanted one of us volunteering, making the choice easy, letting guilt and sacrifice do its work. "No," I said firmly. "Jenny, you're not staying. None of us are. Alex, be practical." "I am being practical." I turned to face the darkness, where I sensed the entity watching. "You said you want to be seen. To be remembered. Fine. We see you. Well, remember you. But not like this. Not as some sadistic game master torturing college kids in a basement. Well, remember you as what you really are, a parasite that feeds on suffering because it's too weak to exist any other way." The temperature plummeted even further. Frost spread across the concrete in branching patterns, creeping toward our feet. "Careful," the entity warned. "You're in my domain now. You exist here by my sufferance. Do we? Or do you exist because we're here? You said it yourself, you need to be acknowledged. Witnessed. Real. Without us. What are you? Just empty darkness. Just forgotten space. Nothing." The candle flame in Marcus' hand began to gutter. Seconds left now. Seconds before total darkness. "Everyone grab hands," I said urgently. "Tyler, say whatever you remember of that dismissal phrase. Even if it's not perfect, even if it's not exact, say it. And well, all repeat it." "But we're not in the circle. We are the circle," the ritual said. 4 corners, 4 names, 4 invitations. It never said the circle had to be made of paper and candles. We're the circle. We were from the beginning. Tyler's eyes widened. "Holy shit. You're right. The papers and candles were just props, focusing tools. But the real ritual was us, our intention, our invitation. Then we can revoke it." Marcus said, catching on. "We can close what we opened. Together," Jenny added, grabbing my hand and Marcus. "Right. We formed a circle, the 4 of us, hands clasped. standing in the impossible space the entity had created. The candle gave one final flicker. "Say it!" I shouted to Tyler. "We four who called you forth," Tyler began, his voice shaking but growing stronger. "Now close the door. We four revoke the invitation. We four deny acknowledgement. Return to the forgotten spaces. Return to the dark." We repeated it, our voices joining into one. "We four who called you forth. Now close the door. We four revoke the invitation. We four deny acknowledgement. Return to the forgotten spaces. Return to the dark." The candle went out. For one terrible heartbeat, we were plunged into absolute darkness and absolute silence. The entity's presence swelled, and I felt certain Wed failed. That Wed made our choice to die together, rather than let one survive, and the entity would claim us all. Then Marcus' watch alarm went off. A tiny, electronic beeping that shouldn't have worked. His watch should have been as dead as our phones. But it was working. Beeping midnight. Thanksgiving giving way to Friday. And in the small LED light of that watch face, I saw the walls of our basement. Real walls. Close walls. And behind Tyler, I saw stairs. The normal lights flickered once, twice, then blazed back to life. The bare bulb overhead was suddenly the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. We stood in our basement, exactly where Wed started, surrounded by the four corners of paper with our names written on them. The candles were reduced to stumps, their wax pooled on the concrete, but the flames were normal yellow again, normal and warm and real. "Did we?" Jenny started. "Get upstairs," Marcus interrupted. "Now, before it comes back." We ran. We made it halfway up the basement stairs before the door slammed shut. Not just closed, slammed with enough force to rattle the frame. The sound echoing through the house like a gunshot. Marcus was in front, reaching for the handle, but before his fingers could touch it, the deadbolt slid into place. From the inside, on our side of the door. No, no, no. Marcus pulled at the handle desperately. The door didn't budge. "Come on." Behind us, the basement lights flickered. Once, twice. On the third flicker, they stayed out. Darkness rushed up the stairs like a living thing, swallowing the steps one by one. "Move." Tyler shoved past Marcus, throwing his shoulder against the door. It didn't even shudder. "Help me." Jenny and I joined him, all three of us ramming the door with everything we had. It felt wrong, solid, but also somehow liquid, as if we were pushing against water that had learned to mimic wood. The surface seemed to absorb our impacts rather than resist them. It didn't work. Jenny gasped, backing away from the door. The dismissal didn't work. "It's still here." She was right. I could feel it now, that presence, that void-shaped wrongness. It was angry. The ritual might have kicked us back to our real basement, might have broken whatever pocket dimension the entity had pulled us into, but it hadn't banished the thing itself. And Wed insulted it, challenged it, called it weak. Parasite. The entity's voice hissed from the darkness below. Not the multitude of whispers from before, but something more focused, more personal. "You called me a parasite. You, who summoned me. You, who invited me into your space. You, who opened the door." The temperature dropped so fast that ice formed on the stairs. Tyler's breath came out in clouds as he pressed himself against the locked door. "We revoked the invitation," I shouted into the darkness. "We closed the door. You have to leave." "I would have let one of you go," the entity continued, its voice climbing the stairs toward us. "I would have been satisfied with 3, but you rejected my mercy. You challenged my nature. And now," the thing appeared at the bottom of the stairs. This time, it wasn't just a void-shaped absence in the darkness. It had form, terrible, impossible form. A figure roughly human in shape, but constructed from wrongness itself. Limbs that bent at too many joints. A torso that seemed to be inside out, and where its face should have been. A swirling vortex of black that pulled at our vision, making our eyes water just from looking near it. But worst of all were its hands. Normal human hands. 5 fingers each, positioned correctly. These hands were the only human thing about it, and that contrast made them infinitely more disturbing than if they'd been claws or tentacles or anything else. Those hands reached up, grasping the stair railing, pulling the entity upward with movements that defied physics, flowing rather than walking, ascending without actually climbing. "Now, take all 4 of you," it said. "Your fear, your regret, your slowly fading hope. You'll join the others. And every time someone new comes to this place, every time someone is foolish enough to call out to the darkness, you'll watch. You'll warn them with your eyes, with your gestures, but they won't listen. They never listen." The entity was 3 stairs away, then 2. Its presence was overwhelming, a suffocating weight that made it hard to breathe, hard to think. I could feel it trying to get inside my head, pulling at my thoughts, unraveling my sense of self. Marcus still had his back against the door, but he was sinking to his knees. Tyler had his hands over his ears, as if he could block out the entity's voice, even though the voice wasn't coming through sound. Jenny was crying, her back pressed against the wall. "We're going to die here," she whispered. "We're going to die in this fucking basement on Thanksgiving break, and no one will ever know what happened to us." The entity reached the top step, towering over us in the cramped stairwell, those human hands extended, reaching for Marcus first. That's when my pocket buzzed. For a second, I thought it imagined it. But no, there it was again. A vibration against my hip. My phone. My dead phone was coming back to life. I pulled it out with shaking hands. The screen was still black, but I could feel it vibrating, could feel heat building in the battery. Then, suddenly, the screen flashed bright white. So bright, it was blinding in the cramped darkness of the stairwell. The entity recoiled. Not much, just a flinch, but I saw it. The thing that had seemed invincible moments before had pulled back from simple electric light. "Your phones," I shouted to the others. "Get them out! Turn them on! They're dead!" Tyler said. But he was already digging his out of his pocket. The moment it hit his palm, his screen lit up too. Then Jenny's. Then Marcus. 4 phones. 4 sources of electric light. Modern light. Real-world light. Light that carried with it the full weight of human civilization's satellite signals, data streams, the entire connected web of modern existence. The entity screamed. It wasn't a sound, not exactly. More like a rip in reality. A tear in the fabric of the space around us. The walls of the stairwell cracked. The door behind us buckled. And the thing itself began to dissolve, its form coming apart like smoke and wind. "No, this is my space, my domain. You invited me, and now we're uninviting you," I said, holding my phone higher, pushing toward it even as every instinct screamed to run. "You exist in forgotten spaces, in darkness and isolation. But this," I gestured with the phone, "this is connection, communication, the exact opposite of what you are. You can't exist here. Not really, not permanently." The other 3 understood. They raised their phones too, forming a wall of light. The entity was trapped between us and the basement below, caught in the illumination of our modern devices. "You haven't won," it hissed as its form continued to disintegrate. "It'll wait, in the basement, in the forgotten corners, in the moments when you're alone and afraid. It'll wait, and someday you'll come back to the darkness. Everyone does eventually. Maybe," Marcus said, his voice steady now. "But not today, not here. Get the hell out of our house." We advanced as one, phones held high, pushing the entity back down the stairs. It fought, tried to reform, but the electric light was too much. Too real. Too connected to the larger world. The thing was meant for isolated spaces, basement seances performed by drunk college students in the middle of the night. But it was morning now, Friday morning, and somewhere upstairs, I could hear traffic beginning on the street outside. The world was waking up. Normal life was resuming. And this thing had no place in it. The entity reached the bottom of the stairs and, for just a moment, it stopped fighting. I could see something in that swirling void where its face should have been not quite an expression, but something close to it. Recognition, maybe. or resignation. The next ones won't be as clever. It said, "They never are." "I'll see you again, Marcus Chen, Jenny Rodriguez, Tyler Morrison, Alex Thompson. I know your names now. I'll always know your names." Then it sank into the concrete floor like water being absorbed by sand, and was gone. For a long moment, we just stood there, breathing hard, phones still raised, waiting for it to return. It didn't. The door behind us clicked, the deadbolt sliding back into the open position, all on its own. Marcus turned the handle, and this time, it opened. Normal wooden door. Normal kitchen on the other side. Normal Friday morning light streaming through the windows. We stumbled out of the stairwell and into the kitchen. Tyler immediately collapsed against the refrigerator. Jenny grabbed the counter for support, her legs shaking. Marcus and I made it to the kitchen table before our knees gave out. "What the fuck?" Tyler finally said. "What the absolute fuck was that?" None of us had an answer. We sat in stunned silence as dawn fully broke, as the house slowly warmed, as normal sounds filtered in from the neighborhood dogs barking, a car starting, someone's garbage truck rumbling past. Marcus' phone buzzed, an actual notification this time. Then Jenny's, then mine and Tyler's. All our devices were fully functional again, showing normal battery levels, receiving normal signals from the normal world. On my screen was a text from my mom. "Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you're having fun with your friends. Love you." I stared at it. Had Thanksgiving really been just last night? It felt like weeks had passed in that basement. Years, maybe. "We need to tell someone," Jenny said quietly. "The police. The landlord. Someone needs to know." "And tell them what?" Marcus asked. "That we performed a séance and summoned a monster? That we got trapped in a pocket dimension? They'll think we're crazy, or high, or both." He was right. I knew he was right. But the thought of just not reporting it, of letting that thing stay in our basement, waiting for the next stupid college students to call it forth. "We're not staying here," I said. "We're breaking the lease. Moving out. Today. Right now." The others nodded in agreement. There was no discussion, no debate. Whatever consequences came from breaking our lease were nothing compared to staying in this house for even one more night. "But we should document it," Tyler said. Head pulled out his laptop, miraculously working again, and was already typing. "Everything that happened. Every detail. Even if we never tell anyone officially, we should have a record. In case." "In case what?" Jenny asked. Tyler looked at us, his face pale. "In case it happens to someone else. In case they need to know there's a way out." So we spent that Friday morning writing. All four of us, sitting around our kitchen table, documenting everything we could remember. The invitation phrase, the dismissal words, the entity's appearance, its behavior, its weaknesses, the ghost figures of previous victims, the mirror showing the real world, the way electric light and connection seemed to push it back. By noon, we had a comprehensive document. Tyler saved it to a flash drive and to the cloud, just in case one method fails, he said. Then we packed. Threw our essentials into garbage bags and suitcases and trash bags. We were out of that house by 3 p.m., crashing at Jenny's friend's apartment across town, refusing to explain why we needed to leave so suddenly, just repeatedly saying emergency and please. Our landlord threatened to sue. We told him to go ahead and mention that Wed be happy to explain in court exactly why Wed left. He never followed through. But the nightmares started that first night. The four of us stayed together at Jenny's friend's apartment for 3 days, sleeping in shifts, afraid to be alone, constantly checking our phones to make sure they still worked. On day 4, we finally started to separate Tyler to his parents' house. Jenny and Marcus to her aunt's place in Charlotte. Me to a cheap motel on the edge of town. But we stayed in constant contact. Group texts every hour, FaceTime calls twice a day. As if by maintaining connection, by refusing to be isolated, we could prevent the entity from coming back. For the first week, it seemed to work. Life slowly returned to something approaching normal. Finals were coming up, and we forced ourselves to study, to attend review sessions, to pretend that Thanksgiving night hadn't happened. Then Tyler started seeing the shadows. He called me at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday, his voice shaking. "It's in my room. I can see it in the corner. That void shape, just standing there, watching me." "Turn on the lights," I said immediately. "All of them, and keep me on FaceTime." He did. The shadow disappeared the moment the overhead light blazed on. We stayed on the phone until sunrise, and the thing never came back. But the next night, it appeared in Jenny's aunt's basement, then in the corner of Marcus' childhood bedroom, then in my motel bathroom. We realized what was happening. The entity hadn't been banished. Not really. It had just been pushed back, and now it was testing us individually, appearing in our private spaces, reminding us that it knew our names, that it was still there, in the forgotten corners and dark spaces of our lives. It never came when we were together, only when we were alone, only in darkness. So, we developed strategies. Never complete darkness, always a nightlight, a phone charging light, something. Never isolation, always someone on call, ready to FaceTime at a moment's notice. And never, ever going into basements. The psychology department would have had a field day with us. 4 previously well-adjusted college students suddenly developing what looked like shared PTSD, collective phobias, elaborate coping rituals, but none of us cared. Whatever it took to keep that thing at bay, we did it. Winter break came, finals ended. We all went our separate ways, Tyler to California to visit family, Jenny and Marcus to Europe for a trip they'd planned before everything happened, me to New York to stay with relatives I barely knew. The distance should have made it worse. Should have given the entity more opportunities. But something strange happened instead. The further apart we got, the less often we saw it. As if distance diluted its power. As if it needed us together, needed the possibility of that group dynamic, that choice it had tried to force us into in order to properly manifest. Or maybe it just got bored. I read everything I could find about supernatural encounters, seances gone wrong, entities from liminal spaces. There wasn't much that matched our exact experience, but I found fragments. Stories from different cultures, different time periods, all describing similar phenomena. Things that lived in forgotten spaces, that fed on isolation and fear, that could only be summoned by invitation and could only be banished by... Well, the banishment part was unclear. Every culture had different methods. Some said electric light worked. Some said running water. Some said iron. Some said prayer. But they all agreed on one thing. These entities were difficult to permanently remove. Once they'd been invited, once they'd learned your name, they retained a connection, faint, easily overwhelmed by normal life. But there, always there. Spring semester started. We returned to campus to different apartments, different houses, anywhere but 1847 Maple Street. We still saw each other regularly, still maintained our group chats and frequent calls, but there was something different now. A distance that hadn't been there before. Not hostile, not even uncomfortable, just different. We'd been through something that bonded us and isolated us in equal measure. We understood each other in ways no one else could, but that understanding came with a weight. Every time we got together, we were reminded of that night, of what we'd seen, of what still lurked in the dark corners of the world. "Do you think it'll ever go away?" Jenny asked one night in March. We were all at Marcus' new place, studying for midterms. She looked exhausted, we all did. "Or are we going to live with this forever?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe it fades over time. Maybe it doesn't. But we're managing it. That's what matters." "Are we, though?" Tyler said quietly. Had been staring at his laptop screen for the past hour without actually working. Managing it? Or are we just surviving it? We didn't have an answer for that. But as spring turned to summer, something did change. The sightings became less frequent. The shadows in the corners started looking like ordinary shadows again. The cold spots in rooms began to feel like normal air currents. Whether the entity was actually leaving us alone, or whether we were just getting better at ignoring it, I couldn't say. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe survival and management were the same thing when it came to supernatural parasites that knew your name. We made plans for summer. Tyler got an internship in Seattle. Jenny and Marcus were going to travel through South America. I was staying in North Carolina, working at a summer camp for at-risk youth. Different paths, different lives. The natural drift of people who'd been bonded by trauma but were slowly healing. On our last night together, before everyone scattered for the summer, we went back to that street. Not to the house, we weren't that foolish. But we drove past it, slowly. At twilight, when the shadows were just starting to gather, the house looked abandoned. Unkempt yard, dark windows, a for rent sign in the front yard that had been there since February, according to Tyler, who'd been monitoring it online. No one stayed more than a week, Tyler said. 7 different tenants since us. They all leave suddenly. No explanation. Good, Jenny said. Maybe, eventually, someone will tear it down. Or maybe it'll stand there forever, Marcus said quietly, getting more forgotten, more isolated, feeding whatever's in that basement until it's strong enough to really break through. We sat in silence, looking at the dark windows, the basement level barely visible from the street. Somewhere down there, in the darkness, in the forgotten space beneath the house, something was waiting for the next invitation. The next foolish group of college students looking for a thrill. The next people who didn't understand that some doors, once opened, can never be fully closed. I started the car. Let's go. We don't need to be here. As we pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Just for a second, I thought I saw something in one of the basement windows. A shape. A void darkness pressed against the glass, watching us leave. But when I looked again, there was nothing. Just empty windows and gathering shadows. Just a house. Just a basement. Just a forgotten space on a forgotten street. Nothing more. At least, that's what I told myself. The nightmares started again in August. Wed, all gone our separate ways, living our separate summers. And for 2 months, everything had been fine. Normal. The entity seemed like a distant memory, something that had happened to different people in a different life. Then, on August 15th, exactly 9 months after Thanksgiving, I woke at 3:33 a.m. with the absolute certainty that I wasn't alone. I was in my cabin at the summer camp, exhausted from a day of managing 15 hyperactive 10-year-olds. I'd fallen asleep with the lights on, old habit, but somehow, they were off now. The room was completely dark except for the faint glow of my phone charging on the nightstand. And in the corner, barely visible in that dim light, was the shadow. Not the solid void shape Wed encountered in the basement. This was fainter, translucent, like it was being projected from somewhere far away, a ghost of a ghost, but unmistakably the same entity, the same wrong proportions, the same human hands. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just watched it watching me. Then my phone buzzed. A group text from Tyler. It's back. Can see it in my apartment. Anyone else? Marcus. Guest bedroom. It's here. Jenny. Bathroom mirror. Standing behind me. All 4 of us. Simultaneously. Across 3 time zones and thousands of miles. The entity in my corner seemed to solidify slightly, as if our collective awareness was feeding it. Those human hands reached out, not toward me, but toward my phone. Toward the connection between us. I told you I would wait, it whispered, the voice distant but clear. I told you I knew your names. We dismissed you, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. We closed the door. You closed one door. But you opened others. 4 corners. 4 names. 4 parts of a whole. You're still connected to each other. Still bound by what you experienced. And that connection, that's a door too. One you've kept wide open with your constant contact, your group chats, your shared trauma. I grabbed my phone, reading the rapidly accumulating messages from the others. Tyler, it's getting clearer, more solid. Jenny, can anyone else feel the cold? Marcus, why is it happening now? What changed? And then I understood. I looked at my phone's date, August 15th, counted backward, exactly 9 months since Thanksgiving. 9 months since Wed performed the ritual. 9 months since Wed invited the entity into our lives. It's been gestation, I whispered. It's been growing, getting stronger, using our connection to each other as a tether to our world. Finally, the entity said, its satisfaction palpable even through the distance. One of you understands. You didn't dismiss me. You couldn't. I am acknowledged. I am witnessed. I am real. And I've spent 9 months learning you. Learning how you think, how you fear, how you love. The shadow in my corner moved forward, becoming more solid with each moment. I no longer need the basement, the forgotten space, the darkness and isolation. You've given me something better. Connection, relationship, the bond between 4 people who refuse to forget what they've seen. Every text, every call, every moment you've spent reassuring each other that I'm not real you've been feeding me, strengthening me. My phone lit up with an incoming FaceTime call from Marcus. I answered, and my screen split into 4 panels. Me, Marcus, Jenny, and Tyler. All 4 of us, in our separate locations, all 4 of us with the entity visible behind us, growing more solid by the second. What do we do? Jenny asked, her voice breaking. How do we stop it this time? You don't, the entity said, and now its voice came through our phones, as well as from the shadows. You can't. You invited me, and you sustained me, and now I'm part of you, part of your history, your trauma, your bond. As long as you remain connected to each other, I remain connected to you. Tyler's face on the screen went pale. So we have to. Stop being friends? Never talk to each other again. Would that even work? Marcus asked. Or would it just make us isolated, vulnerable? Such delicious uncertainty. The entity crooned. That's the beautiful part. You can't win. Stay together, and I use your connection as a bridge. Separate, and I take you one by one in your isolation. Either way, I exist. Either way, I feed. The 4 shadows were almost fully solid now, nearly identical to the creature Wed faced in the basement. But something was different. I could see it in the way they moved, the way they postured. They weren't trying to grab us, weren't threatening violence. They were just there, present, acknowledged, real. You're not going to kill us, I said suddenly. Are you? That was never the point. The entity in my corner tilted its head. No, death is quick. Forgetting is final. I don't want that. I want you to live. To remember. To carry me with you. 4 witnesses to my existence. 4 people who will never forget, never dismiss, never let me fade back into the forgotten spaces. That's it, Jenny said. You just want to be remembered. I want to exist, the entity said simply. And you've given me that, not just for 9 months, forever, because you'll never forget that Thanksgiving night. You'll tell people, even if they don't believe you. You'll write it down, you'll document it, and through your memories, through your witness, I persist. The shadows began to fade, not quickly, but gradually, like mist burning off in morning sun. I don't need to appear to you anymore. I don't need to frighten you. You already believe. You already know I'm real. And that belief, that knowledge is all I need. You're my anchors to the world, my proof of existence, my witnesses. Wait, Marcus said urgently. If we're witnesses, if that's all you need, then why did you try to trap us in the basement? Why the choice? Why threaten to keep us there forever? The entity laughed a sound less disturbing than before, almost fond. Would you have believed if you'd escaped too easily? Would you have remembered if there hadn't been real danger? Fear creates memory. Trauma creates witnesses. You needed to feel genuine threat. Needed to face real choice. Needed to think you might actually die, but we weren't really in danger. Tyler said slowly. Were we? Does it matter? Your fear was real. Your belief is real. And that makes me real. Thank you, Marcus Chen, Jenny Rodriguez, Tyler Morrison, Alex Thompson. Thank you for seeing me, for refusing to forget me, for making me real. The shadows vanished completely. Our 4 faces on the phone screen, in our 4 separate locations, all staring at empty corners where the entity had been moments before. For a long time, nobody spoke. Then Jenny said quietly, "Did we just provide a cosmic service to an interdimensional parasite?" "I think so," I admitted. "I think we did. And we can never stop," Marcus added. "Because if we forget, if we let it fade from memory, does it die? Or does it get angry?" We didn't have an answer for that. Maybe there wasn't one. Tyler broke the silence with a hollow laugh. "Well, this is going to make for one hell of a story." "Assuming anyone believes us, they won't," I said. "That's the thing. We're the only witnesses, the only ones who know. We could tell 1,000 people, and most of them would think we're crazy. But it doesn't matter, because we know, we believe, and that's enough. Enough," the entity's voice whispered. So faint, I might have imagined it. "More than enough. Thank you, my witnesses, my anchors, my proof." The call continued for another hour. We talked through what had happened, tried to make sense of it, eventually gave up trying. Before we disconnected, we made a pact. We would document everything, write down every detail, not just for others, but for ourselves, so that when we were old, when our memories faded, we'd have a record. Proof that it had happened, that it had been real, that we had made something real simply by believing in it. I'm writing this now, months later, fulfilling that pact. Every detail I can remember, every moment of that night and the months that followed. This document will be saved, backed up, shared, not because I expect people to believe it, but because the entity was right. As long as we remember, as long as we witness, it exists. And maybe that's okay. Maybe some things need to be remembered, need to be acknowledged. Even the dark things, especially the dark things. Because forgetting doesn't make them go away, it just leaves them hungry. I still see the shadow sometimes, in corners, in reflections, in the space between awake and asleep. It doesn't frighten me anymore. It's just there. A reminder that I witnessed something impossible, that I survived something I shouldn't have, that I'm part of something larger and stranger than the mundane world pretends to be. Marcus and Jenny got married last month. Tyler's in medical school. I'm finishing my master's degree in social work, specializing in trauma therapy. We all went our separate ways, built our separate lives, but we still text every day, still call every week, still get together when we can. Not because we're afraid of what might happen if we don't, but because we're the only ones who understand, the only ones who know what it's like to have invited something impossible into our lives and survived it, to carry that knowledge, that memory, that witness. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone in my apartment and I feel that familiar cold, he'll say quietly, "I remember you. I see you. You're real." And the shadow in the corner seems satisfied with that. We don't talk about whether we regret that Thanksgiving night, whether we wish we'd never performed the ritual, never invited the entity into our lives. The answer is complicated. Yes, it was terrifying. Yes, it changed us. But it also showed us something true about the world, that there are spaces between spaces, entities between entities. That reality is stranger and more permeable than we'd imagined. And maybe, in some strange way, we helped something that needed help. An entity that had been forgotten so long it had almost ceased to exist. We gave it witness. We made it real. The cost was our innocence, our ability to dismiss the supernatural as fiction, our comfort in empty rooms and dark spaces. But we're still here, still friends, still witnesses, still anchors for something that exists because we refuse to forget it. And that's the real horror, isn't it? Not that we encountered something terrifying, but that we are still choosing to keep it real, to maintain the connection that sustains it. Because the alternative, letting it fade, letting it be forgotten, letting it become nothing again, feels somehow crueler. We made it real, and we owe it our memory. So if you're reading this, if you've heard our story, and you're thinking about performing your own ritual, seeking your own supernatural encounter, trying to peek behind the veil of reality, just remember, some invitations can't be revoked. Some witnesses never stop witnessing, and some things, once made real, stay real forever. The entity is still there, in forgotten basements and empty corners, in the spaces nobody looks, waiting for the next invitation. The next group of foolish college students who think it's just a game. And when they call out to the darkness, when they write their names in a circle and speak the words of invitation, it will remember us. And it will respond, because we made it real. And real things don't just disappear,